40 years ago, America, with their major trading partners, struck a deal called the Plaza Accords, which devalued the dollar against all the major trading partners. So we're going to look at today is why did that happen? Why did people agree to this? And then what were the long-term effects of striking this Plaza Accord? So first, I pinned to TikTok, and I'll put it under the X inside the comments, the video that I made on Carter and Volcker, which explains that whole situation, and you can watch that on your own, or you don't have to. We'll cover it, not as deeply, but we'll cover it right now. So first, we had like 14.8% inflation. We had stagflation, okay? And people were not happy about this. And Volcker came in with a revolutionary new way of looking at how we set the rates on the market. And Volcker's number one thing was, let's let the long-term rates go where the market thinks they should be. We will just control the short-term rates. And as you can see here, in 1980, up went our interest rates, and we broke inflation and kicked off, as anyone who's watched my Carter Volcker video, probably the greatest 40 years, 45 years of financial industry growth ever, okay? It's just my opinion. You can do what you want. Now, raising the interest rates and breaking inflation in our country, also, remember, we were way bigger than we are today. We were beyond the big dog. And so when we raised our interest rates, what also happened? So you can see here, over to the left-hand side here, you can see where all the currencies went down against the US dollar, okay? Because we had raised our interest rates, as you saw, so high to beat inflation. And so what happens is our currency went up against all the other currencies. And of course, obviously, this caused major trade problems. I'm going to use Wikipedia because they do it sequentially, but I want you to understand what was happening. So in the 80s, under Carter, they raised the interest rates to break inflation, which we were under stagflation in those days. And then Reagan was elected, and we talk about that in the other video. You can go watch it on your own. And Reagan, of course, cut taxes and started to expand the economy drastically. So you got to remember something. There's two things going on here. One, we had raised the interest rates way up, right? I mean, from like 6 to 22%. And then we were on our way down. Reagan gets elected, and he just hits the gas on the economy, all right? So that's what really happened. And that's why you see what happened to the other currencies. Now, inside our government, we were arguing. I mean, the French wanted to intervene and drive down their currency and allow the dollar to, come down. But our government thought a strong dollar was indicative of a strong government. So they wanted the strong dollar and to use an expansion of our economy. So they say here, and then when Baker came in Reagan's second term, we changed our tune. So you can see here in the first line, between 1980 and 1985, so we had the high interest rates, then they started on the way down, but it took like a year and a half. And then we had Reagan come in and expand the economy. So the dollar appreciated against the yen, the mark, the franc, and the British pound, and numerous other currencies by at least 50%. This caused all kinds of issues. Whether a strong dollar was good for the financial industry, right, because we can adapt very quickly in seconds, if not minutes, it wasn't the same for our major automotive, our heavy manufacturers like Caterpillar, our farmers, our high-tech companies, and in those days, that was IBM and Motorola. And so by 1985, their campaign to either put on tariffs, okay, or lower the dollar became so big that Congress began considering passing protectionist laws, which are basically tariffs. We weren't so sure that we should do that, and so we began to do negotiations which lead to the Plaza Accord. So when you think through what was happening to the real economy, the very strong dollar gave the consumers in America incredible purchasing power, and we used it. One thing we know about Americans, we know how to consume, all right? So we continued to consume more and more and more, making the trade deficits worse and worse and worse because we had the strong dollar behind us. We could buy everything for pennies compared to everybody else. So we did. And so this then caused problems. And on the long term, when you look through, our automotive industry never recovered from this, let's say, from 1980 to 1988, that whole era there, our cars never recovered. And here they point out that eventually, as the years went by, it did reduce our deficits as the dollar did decline over a period of time. So most of our partners, our deficit did go down, but it did not go down against the Japanese. Here, Wikipedia points out that even though we did reduce against the Europeans, we didn't go against the Japanese. We did not reduce because of the restrictions on imports. So this led in 1987 to the Louvre Accords, which again, we pushed down the dollar again, all right? So constantly intervening with our trading partners to drive down the dollar. So people argue about this. I don't know enough to argue about it, but there are people who say that the Plaza Accords are what made the big bubble in Japan, which then led into the last 30 years of suppression. Because when that bubble burst in 1988, there was very little that stayed up in Japan. And by 1993, they were in full suppression. And from 1993 until basically, I would say, 2023, we were suppressing the interest rates in Japan. So this has shown us that just the interest rates and moving your currency is not sufficient in reducing the trade deficits. So think about what happened. In 80, we raised our interest rates, which shot up a lot, which shot up the dollar against all our trading partners, which made the situation even worse. So by 1985, they wanted to intervene to drive down the dollar, but our interest rates are already coming down, but we weren't adjusting on the currencies. So we did the Plaza Accords over 3 years, 85 to 88. And in 87, we had to do the Louvre Accords to, again, drive down the dollar, especially against the French franc. The French wanted it down, okay? They wanted the French franc up and the dollar down. So we signed those accords, and we worked with our partners to get that done. So you might ask, okay, Danny, so what has this got to do with today? Who cares? Different times, different methodology, everything was different. But in many ways, you have to say, kind of the same. Well, here's what China looks at when they look at those accords. So on the left here is the Japanese are the blue, and their economy was $4.5 trillion in dollars. We did them in dollars so we can compare. And the China economy was $444 billion in 1993. In 2023, Japan was 4.2 trillion, smaller than they were 30 years ago. And look at where the Chinese are. This is what the Chinese will not do with the yuan. So if you're a country and you see this, right, you say, okay, America fixed their problem by breaking Japan. That's one way of looking at it. You can look at it your own way, right? But China sits there and says, if you think we're going to drive up the yuan so you can drive down the dollar so that we can end up in, basically a highly deflationary scenario for the next 30 years, we're not going to participate. So what should they do? And what should we do? And is our methodology we chose today the right way? Let me know in the comments. and thank you for following.